Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of At the Core. I am so excited today to have my dear friend Erica Berger with us.
Thank you.
Erica and I have known each other for quite some time now, and we're happy to share with everyone out there the conversations that we have over lunch, over coffee, over the phone, right, as we talk a little bit more about the profession that we know and love, sales and leadership.
Absolutely.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm like really excited about this. I've been thinking about it all week.
Good. And you know, it's funny because as I said in the opening, we have these conversations that last over lunch, or you know, we get in these real in-depth conversations, and our goal here is to bring those conversations forward to the audience. So that they can participate, they can comment and add their thoughts and find little nuggets that they can take and bring back to their teams. So in the spirit of that, I want to pull a conversation that we had earlier and kind of get your take on what's happening in our profession of sales, right? We know that, you know, there's a demand for performance and quotas, and we all have goals to hit. I want to get your perspective on where we are today as a profession. And then some of the challenges that we see, whether that's from a developmental standpoint, you have someone who's brand new,
Right.
versus someone who's tenured, and then from a performance level. So from your perspective, give the audience a look from your perspective in terms of where we are as a profession.
So it's really changed. I mean, I've been in outside business to business sales for about 15 years. And when I first started, I didn't have a smartphone. You know, internet was very light.
Yes.
I had to find ways to sell my product.
Okay.
And I think that we've moved from a very transactional selling solution kind of mentality to much more of the let's talk about what you need. Let's figure out where your gaps might be.
Okay.
But I feel like today there's a really wide variety of people in sales. And you mentioned earlier, new people who are just coming in straight out of school versus someone who is like myself, is a little more tenured. Old school mentality, new school mentality, I don't know if you want to call it that, but we talked a little bit about like getting back to the basics.
Right.
But where I see sort of the sales world and the profession of sales is there's a big gap between people who really look at it as a profession and people who look at it as maybe a gateway to something different.
Okay.
And where I find, I think, the most benefit or the most excitement in what I do is the reality of it is what we do is, yes, we have a product and we want to sell it to somebody, but it's really more about the mindset of I have something that people need. And it's really the idea of just genuinely wanting to help people with the product that you happen to have.
Yeah, you know, and you touch on a good point. I think most sales professionals start out with that very organic, holistic perspective of, I want to be in the business to help someone. And what I find as we interact with audiences all across the globe is there starts to be a migration away from that.
Oh yeah.
What do you see driving that migration away from that pure holistic view of I'm getting in this because I really like helping other people versus, you know, where some people migrate to?
So technology,
okay,
I think can sometimes be a barrier where people want to maybe think I can just email somebody or I can send them a LinkedIn request. But then there's this fear of rejection, right? I think in order to be a positive person, you kind of have to put yourself out there, right? Especially in sales, because you're going to have to understand that the majority of the people that you talk to are not going to want, need, or be in the time frame to have the product that you need or the product that you're selling. But, you know, technology can either be a huge asset or a crutch.
Yes.
And I think people who come in now who are a little bit more green look at it in the scope of, well, I can just hide behind my computer. I don't have to make a phone call. I can send out emails.
Right.
And it's not as organic as for me 15 years ago where I had to have a verbal conversation with somebody. I had to pick up a telephone.
Right.
I mean, you know, nobody was reading emails on their phones back then. It makes me seem like really old, but
that's how it was, right?
Yes.
I mean, you had to have these interactions. So that leads me to another question.
Yeah.
Knowing that human interaction is still a part of it, right? That social interaction is part of it. It sounds like the onus should be on the organization to make sure that they're team members are prepared for that environment. Because if you're allowed to hide behind just a device, you'll do it.
Yes.
Right? Because the mind, as we learned in our episode with Andorra, the brain is lazy, right?
Right.
It does what's easiest.
Yes.
And that is often easiest because of the fear of rejection. Why aren't we doing a better job, or is there a better way to make sure that people are prepared, whether they're from the old school or new school, that as our good friend Larry always says, right? You got to pick up the phone, right? You got to pick up the phone and have a conversation. None of this just general email.
Yeah. So I think I've worked at varying organizations, but where I see the most success is when you've got leadership that sees value in developing their people so that there's a unified message, that there is this personal touch to it. And I think the reason behind that is I see generational shifting. So the people that we're talking to, the people who are coming into the workforce, you see this kind of generational shift of baby boomers, millennials, and sort of everybody in between. And I've kind of talked to you a little bit in the past about going back to the basics, these basics of human interaction, the desire to want to genuinely help somebody, but in a sense of, I'm going to write a handwritten letter. I'm not going to be the person who's going to sit behind the email desk. I also am just not that type of person who can sit behind a desk like, this is making me a little itchy. I'm like, let me get up there and run around. But to be going back to those basics of traditional sales processes, if you want to call them, but modernizing them, right? Using the tools and the technology that we have, but not completely obliviating the human piece to this. And people buy from people that they like and they trust, and you can't really create trust or relationships or friendships over an email. I mean, unless you're just, a linguistic genius. I really don't see how people can create those bonds that make people want to make a change because they like you, they trust you, and then genuinely want to do business with you as you've created, through whatever the process is. But organizations who, from the top down, create the desire for their people to be developed, to continue to grow, to take those new tools that we have and apply them into sort of how we sell today, that I think is where the best of the best, when you talk about really these top growing companies, these companies that are year after year increasing revenue and increasing growth of personnel, but they have really happy people.
And you're right. I agree. There's that leadership element, and we've been doing a lot of work around emotional intelligence and understanding, right, what those intricacies are, so that you can send the right message and understand who's the other person sitting on the other side of the conversation. Where does the onus fall then? Does the onus fall on the individual to go out there and make sure he or she has those skills? Does it fall on the organization from the training side of the house, right? Whether it's sales enablement, sales training, sales effectiveness, or does it fall heavily on the leadership? I have a feeling your answer is going to be a blend of that, right? But that seems more tactical than strategic. What's the strategy that you've seen or noticed to be very effective?
So while you have to have a good training program, the message should be consistent. The challenge is we are humans, and you can't incentivize somebody to want to do the work. They could sit in a room all day, every day, and learn and be talked to, and yes, that sounds great, but it's the implementation of the process of saying, I learned something really cool, I'm going to actually go out and do it. So while you have kind of a blend of people who are highly competitive, people who are incentivized by their own successes or outside forces, whether it's family, friends, colleagues, or just a feeling of being part of something bigger, you can't control whether or not somebody's actually going to go out and actually do what they're learning in the classroom. And we've talked a lot about this, is that sort of reporting capability of following up and saying, okay, well, we learned this, then you take it out into the world. Did it work? Did it not work? The companies who do that, those are the best companies, because you feel like, hey, we're trying to find value in a process. If that process isn't working, don't continue to do it. But we have to talk to our people, and we have to see in reality how it applies. Because I have been in plenty of wonderful training sessions where I'm like, this is not going to work in the real world.
Okay.
Like, this conceptually sounds great.
Yes.
But when I walk out the door and I start talking to prospects and I start talking to partners, I don't think this is going to fly.
Right.
So it does, to answer your question, it's a blend, yes. You have to have the leadership that has the vision to create a culture, to create an environment, and to develop their people so they don't have turnover and you don't have attrition, and that in itself can change a lot of things.
Yes.
But then you also have to have a good plan, and you have to have people who want to actually do that.
Yes.
So it's like that domino, like if this, then this, then this.
Yes. And you touched on a couple things I want to